Hi, this is Roman Daisel here with another video about Lord of the Rings strategy battle game by Games Workshop, and I'm here to talk about my army of Arnor. Now, for those who just watched the movies, the Arnorians never appear in the actual movie. They're not even referenced in the movies, and this is because of pacing and time constraints that Peter Jackson had. And it would be just too confusing to make more backstory for Aragorn. But Aragorn was from Arnor, the Lost Kingdom of Arnor, in which only the Rangers of the North were left, and the Hobbits of the Shire and the Breenlanders. So the first one I have here is Elendil. And Elendil was the High King of Arnor, and he escaped from drowning of Numenor with 4 ships. And his ships landed in Lindon. In Mithlond, it's called, the city of Mithlond, which is in Lindon, in the Gulf of Lune. And him and his followers traveled to the Numenorian colony that was there at the time, where there were what they're called faithful Numenorians, those who did not fall to the darkness. And he became their king. They accepted him as king because he is actually an heir. He is a descendant from one of the kings of Numenor. And he is indeed a relative of Gil-galad and Elrond, the half-elven. So he was the High King. He marched with Gil-galad and Elrond and Círdan to the War of the Last Alliance, and he died in the battle on the slopes of Mount Doom with Sauron. So that was pretty cool. Next I have a set of 3 infantry, Arnorian infantry. They have spears. And I again have another set of 3 Arnorian infantry. And these ones are painted red, and these ones are painted black for a very good reason. Because in 861 of the Third Age, Arnor split up into 3 sister kingdoms. Arthedain in the northwest, Rhudaur in the northeast, and Cardolan primarily in the south. Now these 3 kingdoms were each at first ruled by an heir of Isildur. And unfortunately, they often fought over possession of Weathertop, or Amansul, as it's called, where there was a palantry. So these kings would always fight. And then, in 1300 of the Third Age, the Witch King of Angmar showed up and started building an army secretly up north in Carndum, which is in the Misty Mountains, or a spur of the Misty Mountains, I should say, waiting his time. Now in 1356, there were no more heirs of Isildur living in Cardolan and Rhudaur, so the Arthedanians claimed kingship over the whole of the other 2 countries, and that didn't go well with Rhudaur, and they had a battle, and one of the Arthedanian kings died in battle because Angmar marched to the aid of Rhudaur. And the Cardolani, they allied with Arthedain for the rest of their short kingship. But anyway, I got the Arthedanians painted black. Why I painted them black? Because Tolkien never really described what they wore and how their armor looked at the time. And obviously the Lord of the Rings movies didn't show anything. So I went to my MERP section, and they provide a really good description of what the uniforms look like, the colors and everything. So I always use that. And it's the same thing for the Cardolani, because there was a book called The Lost Realm of Cardolan. So I use that as a backdrop for the colors. If I want to get more of these guys, so I can put Rhudarum colors in there, which would be cool. And of course I have a captain of Arnor and a standard bearer. I painted them in the Arthedanian or Arnor colors, because the Arthedanians were more pure-blooded than the Cardolani or Rhudarum Dunedain. So we got that. And then I have 2 interesting guys that Games Workshop came out with. I was kind of surprised they came out with these guys. The first one, the guy in white with the staff, is called Malbeth, the Seer, which means golden word. And the reason why he's called that is because he was also one of the users of the Palantiri. He had the king's permission to use the Palantiri. That's why he's called a seer, and to discern the future. And he, in fact, was the one who named the guy beside him, whose name is Arvidu, or Arvidui. And that signifies, that name means last king. And that's very important. But getting back to Melbeth actually prophesied Aragorn in the Past of the Dead later on, the doom of Arnor. So going back to Arvidui, it's quite simple. His mother was a daughter of a king of Gondor, Arnor, and she married Arvidui's father, and there was a choice. It binded the Arnorians and Gondorians again, or Arthadanians, I should say, in Gondor. So they started talking again after a long silence. And what happened is Arnor and his two sons fell in battle on the plains of Dagorlad to the Easterlings, who invaded. So then there was no king in Gondor. And what happened is Arvidui pressed his claim, but the Gondorians rejected his claim and chose instead Ernil II to become their king. Ernil II was a second cousin to the former king and was closer that way, because women didn't have the same rights as men when it came to hereditary. But Melbeth said, if the Dunedain of Gondor and Arthedain choose what seems to be the darkest path, then they will come out better. But if not, then they will wait a long time before someone else comes. And that someone else was Aragorn. That's kind of interesting that Games Workshop came up with those two characters in the Arnor set. Now they did have a book that they came out with, a scenario book and all that with Arnor, but they never explained the Three Kingdoms part that I'm aware of. And then next I have Helberad, and Helberad, whose name means tall tower, he is a kinsman of Aragorn, and he led the great company of 30 northern Dunedain to find Aragorn and Rohan, and then they went through the Pass of Dead, and they were there all the way through to the very end. Halberad actually died during the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, and he was the one who carried the standard that Arwen created for Aragorn to carry. So I'm really glad they included him in their line, because he is kind of important. It's too bad they didn't have the Grey Company in the movie Lord of the Rings. It would have been cool to have Aragorn's kinsmen come. It would have been, instead of just having Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas run through a mountain with skulls falling down on them. And then next, I actually have 4 Rangers of the North. There are 6 models in total. I have 4. One I bought as part of a loose set that I'll get into later. I paid $20 for this bigger set, and he was one of the loose figures. The other 3 I bought for $18 at the Games Workshop store. I did. Isildur I paid, I think it was, or Isildur. I got a Lendl and a Isildur together for, I think, $22. Helberad I got for $11. The Warriors of Arnor I paid $10 for that set, and then $18 for the second set. Arvidui and Melbeth I actually bought online at Games Workshop, and I paid I think it's $32 for those guys. And then in the Arnor Command I paid another $25. They're expensive. I was always hoped they were hard to find on eBay for a good price. So it was hard to find them. I hope Games Workshop continues to release these guys, to have these guys on their website, and I hope they actually make more. It would be cool, because there's so much more they could do if they look at the appendices of Lord of the Rings. There's so much more they could do. Anyway, these guys are actually good to use for obviously the War of the Last Alliance, And also the disaster of the Gladden Fields where Isildur dies, because he would have marched home with the warriors of Arnor. He would have. He would have marched home with some of these guys who had stayed behind after the main host departed. So that would have been really cool. So those two scenarios work really good. Also, you can try and do the Three Kingdoms period, because Arnor was pretty much at peace up until 861 when the sister kingdoms started fighting. And then Angmar came and then really started fighting. But it took over 600 years for Angmar to finally defeat Arthedain. It was a war of attrition, basically. They knocked out Cardolan basically in 1409 when they invaded and sacked the Tower of Almansul in Weathertop, and then as the Cardolani army retreated, they got caught in the Barrow Downs and were defeated there. But I'll get into that topic later on another model that I have. So yeah, these are pretty good with those two scenarios especially. I use them for a lot of things, like these Merc books. I use them a lot. They have army lists, and I use these figures to represent those things too. So anyway, that's it. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to see. I have lots of stuff. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings addict. Well, until next time. Bye.